Is there anything you would have done differently?
We reported a true story.
Our colleague Brian Williams is back in Kuwait City tonight after a close call in the skies over Iraq.
Controversial Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh and questions about Kavanaugh's drinking in the past.
Sean Hannity, come on up, Sean Hannity.
Today, Andrew Cuomo is having a moment.
Hi, I'm Chris Steyerwalt.
And I'm Eliana Johnson.
Welcome to Ink-Stained Wretches, El Wretchos, to our friends, where we break down what's going wrong and what's going right with the American news media. And Eliana Johnson, do you know that this is the 197th episode of Ink-Stained Wretches? Did you know that?
I did not know that, but that's amazing.
For 4 years and 11 months since June 30th, 2021, we have been pumping out delightfully wretched content. And now it is time for us to step back, to step away. And so this will be the last of the wretches, at least for the foreseeable future.
Yes, time for me to have a baby.
Yes, maternity leave. I'm going away on a trip. You're going away to experience the miracle of life. And I mean, they're both equally important, obviously, but both of equal weight. So this is a bittersweet occasion to get to do a wretch before we part.
But we're going to do it just like normal.
Just like we're supposed to, just like we mean it. Yes, because one of the virtues of being an Ink-Stained Wretch is you make deadline and you come out and you do it.
All right, Chris. On our front page this week, we have Paramount Global / CBS News. Paramount is just CBS's owner, reportedly offering $15 million to Team Trump to settle his lawsuit against CBS News, according to people familiar with the situation. And the Wall Street Journal reports that Trump's team wants more than $25 million and is also seeking an apology from CBS News. Notably, the Trump team has also threatened another defamation lawsuit against CBS News related to the alleged bias of its news coverage in another 60 Minutes segment that was about Trump's treatment of the law firms, his executive orders against law firms, in which they likened him to a mob boss.
It's a crazy comparison. Who would ever make that comparison?
Yeah, so Trump's team threatening to slap another defamation claim on there. And I actually think that in this, so the two parties are still at an impasse here, with Paramount Global really wanting to merge with Skydance and needing the federal government's approval for that. I actually think here the on-air apology is a big issue, and Paramount Global and its chairwoman, Shari Redstone, have been at loggerheads with 60 Minutes over a lot of this stuff. And it is hard for me to fathom. They're going to have to look hard and go deep into the bench to find somebody at 60 Minutes who's going to give an on-air apology for their editing of the Kamala Harris interview.
And we should, and I also, Charlie Gasparino has a piece, just to put it in context, that one of the problems that they're facing is that so meretricious, so flimsy is the case against CBS, is Trump's lawsuit against CBS, that there is a concern among members of the board that this will not be covered by insurance, that this will be an out-of-pocket expense for the company, because no insurer would consider this a reasonable legal settlement, but instead basically a bribe. And the idea that you can punish somebody for exercise. If CBS did everything that was alleged in Donald Trump's lawsuit with the Kamala Harris interview, it would be 100% protected speech. There's no world in which how CBS chooses to edit an interview with a politician is not protected by First Amendment privilege, and it's their right. So this is a shakedown, and CBS's predicament is they don't want to be the ones to stand up to Trump. I was reminded of, you remember the jawboning stuff around the COVID pressure, the Twitter files and all that stuff. And the case eventually made its way to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court said, well, this is all very interesting stuff, but no one with standing is suing, because none of the companies would sue the Biden administration over the Biden administration's flagrant efforts to restrict free speech. And it wouldn't have, they did not deem it to be in the interests of their fiduciary interest to their shareholders to do the right thing. So they didn't. And there was a lot of noise made about the Twitter files and all that stuff, but nobody sued and nobody did anything. So in the Trump administration, Disney paid, Meta paid, everybody paid. And now CBS is the last holdout, or last holdout so far. We'll see what the next round brings. But CBS is trying to be extorted. They're like, we want to be extorted. Help us to make a deal.
Well, look, paying 15 million or 25 million to get your merger over the line is a small price to pay.
Is a small price to pay. And because this is a Schumpeterian problem, and I don't want to say too much because I don't want to steal the brilliant mind grapes of my wife, but we have a tyranny here where the people who have benefited most from the system, the rule of law, free enterprise, et cetera, are not inclined to defend it because it's not in their narrow short-term self-interest to do so. And this is a wild and woolly space. And I bet Shari Redstone wishes that they had been quicker to pay Trump and not be one of the last ones, with the pressure mounting on them internally and externally, to take a beating for their cause.
Up next, should we talk about Trump and the departure of Elon Musk?
Well, along the way in our 196 previous episodes, we oftentimes wrestled with the question, how will Trump and Musk end? What will be the ending? And you made a very good point, which was it is in both of their interests for the separation to be amicable, right? It's in both of their interests for it to not end in acrimony. But as Musk has rediscovered the merits of mainstream press, he knows how to get news. So he goes after Trump on the big, beautiful bill, telling the truth, which is that it is a debt bomb, a fiscally preposterous debt bomb, and talking about, he's leaving chagrined. What do you make of it?
A couple of things. I think Musk feels more free to speak his mind about, he's spoken out a few times along the way, even when he was in Trump's good graces, which I think peeved Trump. But now he knows he's sort of on the outs with Trump. I think Trump very much was ready for him to leave and move on out, in part because his poll numbers were bad, something Trump pays quite close attention to, but also because Trump, got the sense that Musk was using this position to advance his business interest in certain ways, and Trump doesn't like that. And I say that fully cognizant of the fact that this hurt Musk's businesses in a lot of ways, and is why he's stepping back. Obviously, Tesla took a real PR hit from Musk's service. So now we learn even more that Musk has told Trump's advisors that he would give $100 million to groups controlled by the president's team ahead of the midterms, and has not given that money. Another thing sure to enrage Trump. He is saying that the bill that Trump and House Speaker Mike Johnson are trying to pass through Congress is not only a bad bill, but one that is undermining the work that DOGE has done. which is sure to anger Trump, and Trump has pushed back on that claim. And yeah, of course, it's in their interests to get along, and I'm sure this relationship will mend. But I've also said along the way that it was hard for me to see this relationship
Right.
ending well.
It had to end. It has to end. Question is how. And I wonder, Musk is rich and crazy and good at generating media attention. And I wonder what conflicts lay ahead between his companies. He's very dependent on federal largesse. So I don't know if he is willing to be the one who, I don't know whether he's ready to have his Ayn Rand moment, the Dagny Taggart of the tech world, but that tension will be interesting to see as it plays out. And to your point about Musk enriching himself inside the federal government in the effort to get control of it, only Trump should be allowed to do that. Only Trump should be allowed to do that.
I think that is his view.
Yes, he's the
certainly
king.
His view.
He's the king, and nobody else gets any of the niblets.
So Musk said, I was disappointed to see the massive spending bill, frankly, which increases the budget deficit, not just decreases it, and undermines the work that the DOGE team is doing. Musk's comments appear to put him at odds with Mr. Trump, to say the least, who has championed the massive spending package. The legislation, which still needs to pass the Senate, would extend Mr. Trump's signature 2017 tax cuts, etc. And then Musk said, I think a bill can be big or it can be beautiful. Musk told CBS News, but I don't know if it can be both. My personal opinion.
He's right. And the Republicans are definitely are whiffing bigly on this, and they know it. And that's why the next day, Speaker Mike Johnson came out with a bill to authorize clawbacks of $8 billion or something of DOGE cuts. And I guess I would say this is a predictable conclusion, or this is not. We're not quite at the conclusion. We're probably still working up to the crescendo, but this is a predictable moment where the big promises of trillions of dollars in cuts didn't materialize, and they are an acrimony because the blame game is inevitable.
Chris, we also have a slew of pardons and commutations that came down from the Oval Office this week. And the New York Times headline, one of them is Trump pardoned tax cheat after mother attended $1 million dinner. And then another one that I pulled up is to win pardons, Trump allies echo his claims of political prosecutions. The president is increasingly using his clemency powers to undermine Justice Department cases against his supporters.
Yeah, the guy who was replaced by Jeanine Pirro as U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, I understand, is now the pardons attorney for the administration, and he's really going for it. I included, and Trump also did a reality show family, pardon the
Chrisleys.
Yeah. And what occurs to me is you're too young, but in a different time, Bill Clinton gave a pardon very famously to fugitive financier Mark Rich. And Mark Rich's wife, Denise Rich, had given Bill Clinton a golden saxophone, had courted Bill Clinton's favor. Other unseemly things were said about their relationship, but it was clear that she had come across bigly on contributions and support for Clinton. And then Mark Rich got a pardon in the closing days. And of the blizzard of corruption and the concluding weeks of the Clinton presidency, the Mark Rich pardon stood out. It was so nakedly political. It was so brazen. And I mark it simply because we are now, what is that, 25 years later, 26 years later, no, 25 years later, We are now at a place where it's like, yeah, we just do it. We just do it. The guy put in his pardon application, the tax cheat guy put in his pardon application that his mother was very supportive, very active in politics, was part of his plea. The abuse,
If you know what I mean.
if you know what I mean, the abuse of the pardon power, which was instituted as a means by which the chief executive could undo the abuses of the justice system, and particularly Alexander Hamilton very naively saying, and its best use will be when it is used to help political adversaries, when it's used for people who are from the other side. The pardon power is a doozy, and Joe Biden got it really trucking in his closing weeks, pardoning his son, shameful, brazen. My son pleaded guilty. He hasn't served. I'm pardoning him anyway. And then those weirdo pardons for people who hadn't been charged with anything. And it was a mess. And Donald Trump is picking up steam in the wrong direction.
And it's of a piece with all these other business deals he's doing and how he's using the office to enrich himself. It's obviously part of the way he views the office of the presidency.
Yeah, get it while the getting is good.
Chris, there was an incredible New York Times story.
Amazing.
You know, we can dump on Trump and point out problems, the obvious problems with his presidency, but not clear how great the Democratic Party is doing. New York Times had a piece with the headline, 6 months later, Democrats are still searching for a path forward. And the most amazing detail in this piece was the following. For now, Democratic donors and strategists have been gathering at luxury hotels to discuss how to win back working class voters, commissioning new projects that can read like anthropological studies of people from faraway places. The prospectus for one new $20 million effort obtained by the Times aims to reverse the erosion of Democratic support among young men, especially online. It is codenamed SAM, short for Speaking with American Men, a strategic plan.
Amazing.
And promises investment to, quote, study the syntax, language, and content that gains attention and virality in these spaces. It recommends buying advertisements in video games, among other things.
Yes, as I'm playing Call of Duty and I see an ad for Kamala Harris, I'm going to go, hey, you know what? Maybe that's the answer. I mean, I understand that there's really nothing to do right now. And the people who raise money are going to keep raising money. And the people who are paid to be strategic and think about stuff have to do stuff. And nothing happens till there's an election. And right now they're sort of twiddling their thumbs. But boy, did this piece speak to the rot inside the American Democratic Party. What a terrible waste of time and money and effort. The Republicans don't have a party per se. They have a dude. They're a cult of personality. Donald Trump has defeated every last battlement of the Republican Party. And that has a lot of downsides, as we just discussed. But I'll tell you one thing, you don't have a lot of meetings about discovering the syntax of voters, and you don't have all the waste that goes into this stuff. And Republicans were nimble, where Democrats had feet of clay. The Republicans were able to capitalize on things. Democrats were not able to capitalize on things. They weren't able to pivot. And what a rotten bureaucracy.
I mean, this really does explain everything about why Democrats lost and how they're nowhere close to finding the path forward or answering the difficult questions about
one of the things,
their failure in November.
One of the things discussed in this piece and elsewhere is the fight over language within progressive groups. where you have some Democrats rightly say PC is killing us, and all of the shibboleths of wokeism are killing us because we can't communicate with the groups that we need to communicate with persuadable voters because they're turned off by it. And you hear then progressive voices say, this is too important. This is too important. And I just think, well, you will feel very, very virtuous when Donald Trump Jr. becomes president for life. You're going to be feeling so good about your choices when, for all this talk about how important democracy is, I'm listening to some people who don't seem to appreciate the virtues of democracy, which are to act as one of the main virtues of democracy, which are to act as a corrective on the excesses of small radical groups.
Chris, in business news, I'm going to flip the order of these. We have the Washington Post announcing another round of buyouts for a few categories of employees. First, employees with 10 or more years of service at the Post, as well as to all members of the video department and the copy desk and the sports copy desk, and then to all members of the editorial team.
Ooh.
So this reads to me like they are trying to recoup some money to make new hires. What is your thought?
Well, I mean, I guess that has to be so. The copy editor, when we talk about how AI will affect things, video editing and copy editing is getting easier very quickly. The cost barriers on creating video and audio content and editing copy are going down. So that makes sense. That I get that. Editorial, I get, because they want to do something different, right? They have people that it's funny for me to think of the people who quit in protest, who I won't work here. Hey, if you'd have stayed around a few more months, you could have just taken a buyout, right? And left with some parting cash. So we don't know yet who.
But they feel good about themselves, Chris.
They do feel better.
They get to feel virtuous.
They do feel virtuous. I think well, do you know when they're going to pick a new editorial page editor?
So the other, I don't, but they say in here that they hope to do so by July when these buyouts are done. I will note that in all the time since Jeff Bezos announced these new pillars of free markets and free people, or whatever the other pillar was, that were supposed to guide the new editorial page, there have been zero changes to the paper, and the movement over there appears to be pretty slow.
Well, maybe instead of going fast and breaking things, maybe the idea is that they want it to stick. So I'll give them the benefit of the doubt.
Appear to be in no rush.
Yeah, which is, again, another benefit of patronage journalism, which is you're not worried about, I'm sure they have targets and goals, but it's not like we're going to go bankrupt next week. If they could be bankrupted, they would already be bankrupt. So they have time to make good choices.
And the other piece of business news, Chris, you flagged this piece, Fame and Frustration on the New Media Circuit.
Amazing story. Amazing story. So this is from Vulture, from New York Magazine. And that speaks to, so I'll just read the lead. Last fall, when Andrew Garfield began promoting the elegaic A24 romance We Live in Time, his publicity campaign centered on a clear idea. Garfield, who lost his mother to pancreatic cancer in 2019, is a sensitive soul navigating grief. It started with the usual groundwork, tasteful magazine spreads, gauzy interviews with traditional press, the standard junkets, but that was only half the battle. The other half was the thoroughly modern challenge of feeding the internet. Here, always game Garfield excelled. He cashed in on a long-running, playfully ambiguous flirtation with chicken soup dates Amelia de Moldenberg, sure, He narrated an essay about loss for the New York Times Modern Love podcast, processed emotions with Dax Shepard on Armchair Expert, and even helped Elmo explain grief on Sesame Street. He answered questions buried under puppies for a BuzzFeed video, raided the Criterion Closet, and when a bizarre-looking carousel horse from the film went viral, described by Stephen Colbert as a horse tripping something on ketamine, he rolled with the punches. Man, I love the horse meme, he told the AP. And well, and it didn't work. The upshot is it didn't work. And when you think about the business of PR, the old business of PR when I got into journalism was there were a limited number of outlets of different levels of prestige and reach and influence with slightly different audiences. But basically, the game was the same. You want the biggest audience you can get with the broadest reach. Now, in the atomized media world, where celebrity is one of the only currencies, only things of value are recognizable names and faces, how do you hump all of these different constituencies to create a splash? How do you do that? How do you, we've seen great success for Alex Thompson's book, because there was enough critical mass of media attention across different places in politics. But how do you get attention for a book? How do you get attention for a movie? And this was a fascinating snapshot into the degradations and depredations of this business. And wow, woof.
Okay, Chris, that brings us to our facile file.
So facile.
This one was flagged by producer Colin Chicola. It is a Washington Post piece. The headline is "Struggling to Declutter, Try the Poop Rule."
Oh boy.
It's gross to contemplate, but the poop rule helps you through the daunting task of decluttering. And it starts, by the way, let me read this first. Move over, Marie Kondo. There's a new approach to decluttering that's taking over social media. It's a little juvenile and more than a little gross, but it's sparking joy for people who are overwhelmed by their stuff. This one-question framework for deciding whether to keep something or to get rid of it can simplify your space, your routines, and one hopes your life. It's called the poop rule, and it's pretty much what you might think.
What might I think it is? What would I think that is?
I had no idea. Okay, the poop rule is simple. While decluttering, ask yourself, if something was covered in poop, would I still keep it?
Oh my gosh.
It's a fun, no-nonsense way to decide what really adds value to your life. By the way,
Fun.
I would basically keep nothing. Based on this rule, I would keep like my diamonds.
Your child.
And my kid. And that's it. Like, I was thinking, okay, my nicest handbag, my nicest pair of shoes. No, I'd probably just throw them out.
Like how much poop are we talking about? Like flecked or inculcated? I guess I don't want to know.
Yeah. Covered in.
Washington Post. Good.
So
good place for the buyouts to start.
Empty. Yeah, I'd have an empty house.
That's just too stupid to live.
Empty house. Okay, Chris, this New York Times piece I threw in the facile file. 5 years after George Floyd's murder, the backlash takes hold. The Black Lives Matter movement kicked into high gear after Mr. Floyd's murder on May 25th, 2020, has given way to the politics of white grievance championed by President Trump. And I'm reading this piece and reading and waiting to get to the part where it talks about the shameless self-enrichment and corruption of the Black Lives Matter Foundation.
It's got a little taste of that.
Yeah, which surely had something to do with the marginalization of this movement, because part of the statistics cited in this piece are the declining donations to the Black Lives Matter Foundation. And I guess when news articles revealed that the CEO, et cetera, were using donations to purchase mansions in Los Angeles, companies may have been started to get skittish about contributing. So the Times notes, the Black Lives Matter Foundation, Inc. raised a staggering $79.6 million in fiscal year 2021. The next year, that figure was down to almost $8.5 million. By 2023, it was about $4.7 million, etc. And then the piece, nowhere in this piece does it say, maybe all these companies that gave all this money weren't really sincere in the first place. Maybe it was all just virtue signaling.
Yeah. Did you see the story out of Florida about the new president, the guy chosen to be the president of the University of Florida?
Santa Ono is his
Santa, and more like Santa No. Am I right? So Florida has a gubernatorial primary taking shape. And surprisingly to many, one of the principal things that you can do to distinguish yourself is to hate on Ron DeSantis, the formerly very popular and successful, very conservative governor of Florida. And the selection of this guy who came from the University of Michigan, who had previously signed a DEI statement. And now he's unsigned his DEI statement and says that he's in. And so everybody who is trying to install their preferred person at the University of Florida, I assume only Kid Rock will eventually be deemed acceptable. And they were talking about the woke stuff that he said. And I thought, do you think he meant that any more than he means what he's saying now? Do you think that when everybody at the University of Michigan was saying we all have to sign DEI statements, that he was like, I have had a true change of heart and now believe that this is the guiding principle of my life? Or did he say, tell me where to sign, I don't care, I just want to do the job? Any more than right now he's saying, tell me what I have to say, I just want to do the job, I want to get on with it. So I 100% agree with you that the idea that these companies who were trying to stay out of trouble, that's why they did it, right? It was virtue signaling, but it was virtue signaling. It was extortion, right? You better get right. You better get on the good side of this. This is like the people in Washington who, when there was unrest in the summer of 2020, were making sure to put Black Lives Matter signs in the windows of their homes in hopes that violence would not be visited upon their homes. And the companies that did not want to suffer economic violence, boycotts and other things, said, okay, just tell me what we need to do. We've made a contribution. We have a plan. This is our solution. And of course, those people aren't going to stay with it, especially given the corruption and mismanagement. But the last thing I want to say about this is, this isn't the backlash. This is the backlash to the backlash to the backlash to the backlash. It's all lash. It's been on this issue. It's been lashing back and forth since 2014. We had, ever since Ferguson, ever since that moment, we have been lashing back and forth on the question of police brutality, systemic racism, and these other things. Donald Trump just did away with the commission that the reporting that he had commissioned when he was president the first time on tracking police violence. They're not going to track police violence anymore. Nope, federal government is not going to maintain that database. Donald Trump did it the first time because he was pressured into doing it and felt the societal pressure to do it. And now he's undoing it. What will the effect of that be? I assume fueling the next lash, fueling the next round of this. And it's a miserable way to try to be alive for a company, for a government, for a civil society.
So yeah, I just wanted to flag the story because I was amazed that in all of this, buried in paragraph 25 of the piece, was the corruption of the foundation at the center of this.
Yeah.
And then there's a link in the words, allegations of mismanagement have ricocheted between the foundations of its funders. And when you click on allegations of mismanagement, it's a link to a piece that says Black Lives Matter leaders condemn allegations of mismanaged funds.
They condemn.
Yeah, it's amazing. Okay, that brings us to our style section, where I really enjoyed this piece.
I thought you might. I thought you might.
Yes, a Wall Street Journal piece, the headline of which is 6 friends tried to plan a girls' trip in a group chat. Things went sideways. From Dubai to Destin, the meandering text thread bore more futility than fruit, and that was before some split off to a side chat.
Oh, dear.
I mean, I feel like this is a piece that has to be read rather than described, because the upshot is just group chat is not a way to plan a vacation where all these women can't agree on where to go.
Did this mirror your own experiences?
Not really, I have to say, though I did find all the screenshots of the text messages amusing. I felt like reading this, I mean, who even cares? Just pick a place and go, which is sort of how I am when deciding group things. Like, I just don't care.
You're chill.
Yes, wherever. Somebody else picks, somebody else decide.
And then are you ever guilty of second guessing the choices made by others?
No, I don't care.
You're good.
Yeah,
So
the point is like to be together.
And have fun.
Yeah, I suppose.
Not if you can call it that.
I suppose.
I suppose many people are saying.
Now, does this happen to men?
It's been a long time since I've planned anything with a group of other men because, of course, it's wives and significant others that are mostly going to be involved in doing that. But I guess I would say the male stuff is more passive aggressive, or if it's not going well, somebody just sort of drops out, just sort of vanishes, and they don't name the feelings. They just let it go.
Okay. Yeah, I'm pretty I would not say I'm an easygoing person, but with this kind of stuff, I do not care.
Even with your husband?
Oh no, like with my own family, I'm going to do the planning.
You're doing it. Yeah.
Yes, for sure. Basically. But if it's 6 people and there's bound to be, like, I'm not going to start disagreeing with people and trying to take control.
You're a good person like that.
I just feel like I got enough of that in my day life,
Yeah. You already have a job.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. That brings us to our obsessions of the week, where we break down the stories we can't get out of our heads. And Chris, I was so amused when I read this morning. So Trump's lawsuit against the Pulitzer Prize Board for awarding this has been going on for a long time, for awarding these Pulitzers on Russiagate coverage is proceeding.
What the heck?
And
he's suing the Pulitzers for giving prizes?
He's suing the Pulitzer Prize Board.
Oh my gosh.
For giving out prizes, and they have actually commissioned 2 independent reviews of these prizes, et cetera, et cetera. So the Pulitzers suffered another loss in a Florida state appellate court on Wednesday. We're recording this on Thursday, but I was so amused by their argument. So they argued that the litigation would interfere with Trump's presidential duties, and so it just could not proceed. And, they're just looking out for his interests. And
so wait, the Pulitzer's lawyers are saying we shouldn't allow this to go forward. The president has much too much going on to possibly be involved in this. That's kind of a neat trick.
So Law 360 reports a Florida state appellate court on Wednesday denied a bid by the Pulitzer Prize Board to pause a defamation lawsuit brought by Donald Trump after claiming the litigation would interfere with his presidential duties, ruling that temporarily halting the case is, quote, solely in his prerogative. Florida 4th District Court of Appeals Judge Mark W. Klingensmith wrote the opinion for a 3-judge panel denying a petition for certiorari brought by the Pulitzer board after a lower court rejected its motion to stay the case, saying that Trump is a willing participant in the complaint he filed before getting elected to a second term and could cease the litigation, although he could choose not to. The president, by virtue of his exceptional position, is uniquely equipped to determine how to use his time to assess the attention a lawsuit will require and to decide whether the lawsuit will divert him from his official business, Judge Klingensmith said. I absolutely loved their Hail Mary here.
A Florida judge in a difficult position where basically like saying, could God create a boulder so heavy that he could not lift it? Could Donald Trump, in which way do you wish to defer to Donald Trump? And the judge said, Trump is mighty, and he is able to make all these determinations. And I will also say, anybody who has watched this administration or the first one, Trump will make time. He'll make time for this one.
But yeah, good luck. Good luck, Pulitzer board.
Okay, my obsession is something that we've talked about before, and Max Tanney and Ben Smith wrote for Semaphore. It's really interesting. And it starts with an anecdote from Michael Moynihan, my friend, who talked about, well, I'll read the lead. Libertarian journalist Michael Moynihan felt the shift on election night 2024 after it had become clear that Donald Trump would win. He was co-hosting a live stream for the Free Press, a new publication that had boomed in response to the New York Times leftward turn, and was ranting about the dangers of Trump, that the dangers Trump would pose to free speech to an impassive group of anti-woke talkers. This is one of those many moments when I realized that this wasn't, shall we say, a stable coalition, he said in an email last week after leaving a short stint at the Free Press. One didn't have to be especially prescient to spot those anti-woke types who would just slowly become MAGA flunkies. Moynihan is a particularly stark example of an identity crisis now tearing through what had been one of the most vibrant slices of the American media. The eclectic websites, podcasts, newsletters, and television programs that captured a reaction against left-wing speech policing, identity politics, and social media-driven protest movements. And they list Harper's Magazine, the letter that Thomas Chatterton Williams and others signed on to in defense of free speech. But it also includes Bill Maher, the digital show Breaking Politics, Quillette, Unheard, and Persuasion, and the Jewish online magazine Tablet, and podcasts like Blocked and Reported, and The Fifth Column. And this is a very interesting chronicle. If you say, and of these different groups, of these different publications and entities listed here, some have acquitted themselves very well and done a good job. And I think Quillette stands out. I think Harper's stands out. Bill Maher has struggled, but seems to have found footing. But the idea that if you are going to take on the journalistic idea of being the skunk at the garden party, if the idea of journalism is we're going to say the stuff that is uncomfortable, we're going to say the stuff that is you're not supposed to say if we think it needs to be said, adjacency to power is very, very, very dangerous. And being in the good graces, and we'll see what happens with the Free Press. The Free Press was really missing big time at the beginning. And I think that the effort to hire Moynihan was part of an overall effort to say, okay, we have to rebalance and in order to have some credibility as proponents of free speech, free expression against authority and authoritarianism, we're going to have to start acknowledging the stuff that Trump's doing. Andrew Sullivan, who we once interviewed on this podcast, has been particularly good on this. And he had a great interview. I'll send it in for the show notes. Had a great interview with the woman who founded Quillette, talking about what it means to say, I sincerely, the line from, I think it's Byron, that was on the wall in the Charleston Daily Mail newsroom, RIP, long ago when I worked there as a young reporter, without or with offense to friend or foe, I sketch your world exactly as it goes. And obviously we fail in doing that. And obviously we miss the mark in doing that frequently, but it is a good aspiration. And if you're going to do it, you're going to have to be willing to alienate your audience. You're going to have to be willing to say things that your audience doesn't want to hear in order to maintain the credibility you need at different times. And I mentioned Sullivan because Sullivan was absolutely ardent in taking the paint off of Joe Biden and talking about the trans issue was a big one for him. But generally speaking, the wokesterism, all of the stuff that we were discussing when we talked about the Democrats' inability to reset, he was right out in front on all that. And now he is bombing Trump like nobody's business. And he's out there every day talking about, or every week talking about that stuff and bringing on guests who would make MAGA people uncomfortable. And this is the thing. And this is why I hope Jeff Bezos succeeds at the Washington Post. I hope other people are successful in building and establishing institutions where journalism that is unafraid, you don't need to be, there's a difference between being unafraid and being being a provocateur. Those are different things. But what is always needed are people who are not ensorcelled and people who are not trying to game out an audience, but instead are saying, this is the product that we make. We're going to be consistent in the product that we make and the perspective that we have, regardless of who's in power or who we want to suck up to. So this was a predictable kind of problem for the free press. And the rest, this is a great read, very interesting. And let's hear it for free speech.
Chris, that brings us to my favorite time of the week.
Here we go.
Which is reader mail. And we have a note from Bruce Nolan of Kingwood, Texas. And Bruce writes, "Hi folks, I'm a retired daily print wretch and a long time regular listener. Something's bugging me about the intro. I can place and contextualize every voice but one. The first one, who's the Brit and whom did he ask? Is there anything you would have done differently? Making me crazy. Thanks folks and wretch on." And he also flags, sorry, go ahead.
No, I think that's a different reader that flagged the other thing.
Okay, sorry.
So I always thought that it was David Frost. Is it not David Frost?
I believe it is.
Colin?
I believe it is.
Okay, so I assumed it was David Frost. And Colin, I assume that you included it because it sounds plummy and it sets the right mood. Was that why?
I think that was the idea when we first put it in there, but it was 4 long years ago now.
What's so interesting when I hear the intro now, how the people in those stories and the subjects of those that we put in, you put in 4 years ago have changed. The Andrew Cuomo story is a very different story now than it was at the time. The relationship between Donald Trump and Fox News, all of that. So interesting how time and history changes context, but David Frost is eternal.
All right. Next up, we have a note from Rem Maham in Austin, Texas. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Rem, who says,
I'm going to say Rem Maham because it sounds
Okay.
more Texas.
Who flags a Politico piece.
Mm-hmm.
Opinion. 21 unexpected heavy hitters for a Democratic shadow cabinet.
Oh,
Here's
boy.
who the party should tap to take on Trump and refresh the Democratic brand.
Oh, boy.
Giselle Fetterman as Shadow Secretary of Homeland Security.
Ew, what?
Yeah.
What? Why?
And they write, Senator John Fetterman has become a highly controversial figure in the Democratic Party. His militaristic commentary in defense of Israel has alienated progressives. Leaks from his former staffers have raised concerns about whether he is fit to serve in the wake of an extended hospital stay to relieve acute depression. And by the way, that the reporting around that revealed that he and his wife are not on the same page about many things, including politics. But his wife, Giselle Fetterman, has none of the baggage and is a compelling figure in her own right. An undocumented immigrant who came from Brazil when she was a child. Giselle married John soon after he became mayor of Braddock, Pennsylvania. To help poor Braddock residents, she founded Free Store 15104, which provides food and clothes to anyone in need. As her husband's star rose, she kept a cheeky social media presence. When John was elected lieutenant governor, Giselle dubbed herself Slop, Second Lady of Pennsylvania. Oh, yes, so an illegal immigrant's the perfect person to be Shadow Secretary of Homeland Security.
I'm looking through this list, and I will say some of the choices are funny or interesting, like saying Nikki Glazer as Small Business Administration leader, Ben Stein as the USTA. Some are good, like Abigail Spanberger to run the CIA. But let me tell you, if this is the direction in any way that the Democratic Party is going, get ready for the Donald Trump Jr. presidency. Bill Nye as EPA, what you mentioned about Fetterman. There was another Lulu. Where is it? Why isn't my page loading? Oh, this is excellent. That you would have, Josh Green for HHS, governor of Hawaii. That's not unreasonable. But how about, and John Tester for Interior? Okay, I'm sort of undoing my case. But how about Letitia James as the Attorney General? How about that? How about Lena Khan as Secretary of the Treasury? I mean, are you not listening? Who wrote this?
This is like mainstream media's dream team of cabinet.
Bill Schur. Well, let me tell you, if you made Letitia James the Attorney General and you made Lena Khan the Secretary of the Treasury, you would be, speaking of lashes, you're talking about the next lash. You're talking about the just, fortunately, it would never happen. But if this is even directionally indicative of where Democrats think their party needs to go, we got big trouble whether they win or whether they lose.
Yeah, this piece was amazing.
Wow.
All right, Chris, that brings us to our favorite time of the week, where I am forced to say something nice, but you please lead by example.
So I don't know Tom Robbins, and I didn't know Tom Robbins before I read his obituary. He was a professor of journalism at the City University of New York, and he was the, quote, investigative reporter in residence. And he recently passed away, been there since 2011, had worked at the New York Daily News, the Village Voice, and starting in City Limits in 1980, following stints as a cabbie and community organizer. A man of the left, if ever there was one. And when you think about who populated newsrooms in the 1970s, 1980s, and what was going on, definitely of that spirit. And operating from a fourth floor cubicle brimming with books, documents, and old news clippings, including his 1990 daily news story detailing how Donald Trump used undocumented demolition workers from Poland to clear the site for what became Trump Tower, Robbins brought the same passion to training journalists as he had to chasing mobsters and crooked politicians. It is my favorite, not because, I love characters like this. I love folks like this. Whether you agree with their politics or not, this is the sort of energy that is good to have in the news business. But here's why I love this, and here's why I include it. He liked to say that it's a journalist's job to be skeptical but never cynical. And if there's anything that I wish journalists would remember, it is that, right? Cynicism is the enemy. Skepticism is the goal. We want to be skeptical, especially of people in power and people who are seeking power. We want to be skeptical of their claims. We don't want to be credulous, but neither do we want to become cynical, because actually what follows cynicism is not jadedness and all of that. What follows cynicism is corruption, because once you conclude that it's all a scam, and once you conclude that nothing works, the next logical choice is likely to be, so I might as well get while the getting's good too. I might as well figure out my way through. And holding up a light in favor of skeptical but not cynical journalism, and that it can work and it can do good, and that you can achieve some of your goals, and that's all possible, is the essential ingredient in this working. And that's why this is a vocation, this is a calling, and not a profession. And so RIP to this guy. Sounds like he had a lot of fans, a lot of folks who loved him. And I certainly attach myself to that idea, to be skeptical, but never cynical.
Okay, Chris, my favorite item is really a far cry from that, so forgive me. But the Wall Street Journal did a hilarious and fun profile on the attorney in the Hamptons, who is, according to them, the go-to for all of the DWI cases that folks must deal with when they are driving drunk out in the Hamptons. And the headline is How a Lawyer in the Hamptons Became the King of DWI Cases. For elites inclined to hedonistic summers, criminal defense lawyer Edward Burke Jr. can make a simple drunk driving charge all but disappear. And there was so much in here that made me laugh. So the piece says, Edward Burke Jr. spends most of the year handling drug cases, traffic offenses, larceny, and white-collar crime. But during the summer, when this criminal defense lawyer's stretch of eastern Long Island turns into a playground for the rich, his focus is on clients arrested for driving while intoxicated, an offense he calls a DWI. It is, he says, the it charge. When the Hamptons wealthy have their uh-oh moments, getting behind the wheel after an evening of popping corks and downing cocktails, when they DWI all over a good time. It's Burke's never silenced cell phone that rings. Last year, after Justin Timberlake was nabbed in Sag Harbor on suspicion of driving while intoxicated, Burke was in a suit and tie at Timberlake's side in the police station by 4 a.m. So it's just a really fun read.
Every town has a guy that you got to hire, the courthouse fixer, and I guess the Hamptons are no exception.
Yes, I highly recommend it.
Well,
And
it's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure. These 197 episodes, my friend.
Starting in the middle of COVID.
Yeah, starting in the middle of COVID. You're a peach and a great colleague and my friend.
It's been a joy. And with that's the news about the news. If you have a story, keep emailing us. I'm gonna dispense with our typical goodbye, but email us at wretches@nebulouspodcast.com. This has been Ink-Stained Wretches from Nebulous Media, produced by Colin Chicola.